What's up, guys? Extreme Garage here. Hey, today we're talking about this Holly 600 double pumper. I didn't even know they made one. Quick couple things to go over. I seen a bunch of stuff online. So on a sonic cleaner, hey, those work pretty good if the carburetor hasn't been sitting for 20 years. So, and again, you got to make sure that you can blow through everywhere, and make sure that it's not stuck with gunk, right? So if you stick it in the sonic cleaner, hey, and you just rebuild the carburetor and put it back together, hey, you don't really know if it's going to work or not. So what you kind of need to do is blow through all the holes. So again, once you bust the carburetor down, you got the float bowl section, accelerator pump, and again over here, idle circuit. So what you got to make sure that all these little holes you can blow through or get fluid through it, to make sure you got no stuff stuck in there. So even if you stick it in the sonic cleaner and there's a piece of something wedged in there, whether it's sediment, old gas, whatever it is, sometimes the sonic cleaner isn't going to eat the stuff out, which the majority of the time it's not going to eat it out. So then what I do is I take old or new window wire, and then I cut a piece of window wire. It's really thin wire. And then I unstrand it. Hey, and this is super strong, so you can actually push it in each of the holes. So again, like on this metering block here, you got holes that are on the side, like on this one side here, you got a hole on the inside, you got a hole on the outside, and then you got 1, 2 in the middle. They all got to have air or fluid going through them. And then you got the one at the top, and then one inside on the top here, and then you got inside here, tiny little hole there that's got to be cleaned out. So the majority of these holes all have to be cleaned out. So what I go in and I mine them out with the wire, doop, 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 doop. Because even though this big hole, you're like, oh, you stick it in and it's clear, there's a tiny hole on the inside that you got to feed the wire into to make sure it's unclogged. And then when you blow in, it's going to blow it out the jet, it's going to blow it out the top, it's going to blow it out the bottom, and it's going to blow it out the other hole. So when the fluid goes in, it's going to come out all 4 holes. So if you don't have that, or nothing's coming out at all, that means that one's blocked, and you got to get in there and unblock it. So the reason I went back to using the wires, because if they've been sitting a real long time, the sonic cleaner fluid, whatever you use, and I see there's all different kinds of stuff you can put in there, it isn't going to eat the stuff out, and then you got to double check it. So just to give you a quick backstory, I had one carburetor, this is, maybe 6 months ago, that I redid. I put it on the car. So you got the meter and jet on the side. So I'd screw the meter and jet in on one side. It would raise or lower, because it's cutting off air and fuel, right? That's what this screw does. So anyways, I couldn't get the one side cleaned out. So I sent it down to the carburetor shop. Same thing. I get the carburetor back. I bolt it on the car. I have the same problem. I screw in the one side and it's not making any adjustments on the engine, and it's running like shit, really. So I take it back off. I go down to the carburetor shop, and again, these guys have been in business for 40 years. And they're a pretty good carburetor rebuilder in the area that I'm in. So I talk to the guy on the phone. I tell him what it's doing. They give me their Holly tech. He gets on the phone, and I'm talking to him back and forth. So I tell him, I explain to him. He goes, oh, well, what's the problem? I says, well, and I screw the metering jet in. It doesn't change the engine at all. And he's like, well, it's not going to. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, the fluid's going to come in on idle through the back, on the back side. And I go, well, that's not my problem. I go, the car's idling, but I can't adjust the metering screw. And he goes, I go, if you screw these all the way in, it shuts air and fuel off to the one side. Hey, it should kill the motor. You should see some type of up and down adjustment. And he's like, no, you're wrong. I've been doing this for 30-something years. That isn't how it works, da-da-da-da-da. And I says, listen, I go, I'm no carburetor expert. I'm okay at some stuff. I'm not the best at everything. But this meters the air and fuel. I said, so this meters the air and fuel, correct? And he doesn't say anything. And I says, if you screw that in and shut the air and fuel off to one side of the carburetor, it should stall or die, or it should do something. If it's doing absolutely nothing, that means there's still garbage stuck inside this block. And he's like, oh, no, we bench tested it. We did this, we did that. Okay, whatever. I send it back down there. So he takes the carburetor in, and I'm like, listen, you got to bench test it again. I'm like, this 100%, because I bolted a different carburetor. I had a new one. Put the new one on, car ran fine, adjusted everything perfectly. So I says to him, I need something done here. So I don't want to take it back. It's an hour away. So I go, it's a 2-hour ride. So they take it, yada, yada, yada. I get the thing back. I bring it back. I put it on the car. Hey, it worked perfect. So finally I get the guy back on the phone. And he's like, yeah, something was stuck inside. He goes, I got it unplugged. And then it worked perfectly. So my mistake was I didn't go back to rodding them out, which I used to do. So now every one that I do, I rod them out. And then so far they've all worked pretty well. Not to say that you can't have one that there's some kind of problem, or there's sometimes this stuff gets thin or porous and the fuel leaks out, or it's leaking through, or this meter and block is just junk, so all that stuff happens too. But when you do this stuff, you got to make sure that you can blow air through it. Hey, and the one other thing that I got, if I can find it here on the bench somewhere, oh, it's on the floor. So I got a needle, an air. Let's see, it's kind of something you fill up the basketballs with, right? So that screws on the end of my blowgun, and then I could stick this right in the holes, and I can blow high pressure through there. But again, I had a problem with this one where I got them all cleaned out except one. I couldn't get it cleaned out. Then finally, I went back to the window wire, which that's really strong. Yeah, see, so now this fits right inside these little holes. Boom, 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 boom. Don't forget inside here, there's one in here. Bang. And there's one on the other side. So you got to make sure you blow air through all that, which this is a pretty good thing because you can get real high pressure coming out. But again, you got to go back. If you got one that's not working, and when you blow air in through, even if it's on this one, you block the jet off, you block the top off, and then you should have pressure coming out in the middle. So you got to make sure all that's working. So I went back to the window wire, kept sticking it in there. Finally, I got it in the inside hole, and I made it like a little drill because it's kind of, it's kind of lumpy. So I just started turning it like a drill, and finally I got it inside, and I got the piece out, and then I blew my carburetor cleaner through there, so I got it unstuck. So now everything blows through nice on both sides, so now I can put this back together. Hey, and the funny thing again on this one is I never seen a 600 double pumper. I didn't even know they made one. This is the first time I've ever seen one. But this is a nice little thing for a hot rod. It's got mechanical secondaries, which is nice, right? So look, blah, 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 which is nice for a little hot rod, something with, you know, not too much horsepower, but needs a little fuel to get a little more out of it. So this is a nice addition. So again, just make sure you rod everything out on these carburetors. I'm going to put this one back together now. Hopefully this helps somebody else out. Again, I used window with the wire you cut the windows out with. I cut a piece, and this is nice and strong, so when you stick it in, it's hard to bend it, you know. I had a piece of regular wire that I took out of a, you know, piece of electrical wire, and it's just real flimsy, so you can just kind of bend it. So if you got something stuck in there pretty good, it's not going to weed it out. So again, you kind of got to stick to your guns, right? You know, because I talked to that guy on the phone, and he's like, you know, I've been doing this forever, and you're an idiot, and da 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 da. And I'm like, listen, I'm no expert, but I know when you turn the screws in, it's supposed to adjust the engine, right? So you got to stick to your guns, because you don't want to pay for something and get back a piece of shit that's not going to work for you. You know, you got to, you know what I'm saying, articulate your what you're trying to say to them, and make sure they understand where you're coming from. And it helps to have a new one that you can bolt on and be like, oh yeah, look, the new one works fine. The old one that I just paid you $250 doesn't work at all. So again, keep that in mind when you're doing these carburetors. Make sure you can blow air through all those little holes, rod them out nice. Hey, and then stick it back in your cleaner, and then you'll have a real nice job. So when you bolt it on, it'll work the first time, and you shouldn't have any problems, you know. So I'm going to start sticking this back together, because I already did the needle and seat inside. I already put the accelerator pump, the new boop, 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 the new vacuum piece in there. So that's all set. I set my float already. Hey, and this is something else real quick, just so you know, for the non-professionals, the meatball guys. I'm a meatball guy too myself. But again, hey, 3/8 extension. If you stick the 3/8 extension flat and you just start to pick up the float, that's exactly where you want it to be. So again, once you set your floats, you get the thing cranking around, but make sure you have somebody there, because in case you made a mistake or something stuck, or you crank it a few times and then you got fuel coming out, you got to know to shut it off right away. Don't keep cranking it, right? So have somebody watching it, make sure there's no fuel leaking out nowhere, and then once you get it fuel in the bowls, just take the nuts off, kind of bounce the car. You should have a little fuel coming out. Shouldn't be running out. If it's running out, you got it set too high. You know, just get in there and adjust that back off a little bit, and then or sink it down, whichever way you got to go to get it what you need, right? So again, that's how I do it. They usually come out pretty good. And again, if you're an expert, you can get in there and measure it and do all the stuff you got to do. But again, this is something I'm just trying to jam out. I got to get that Camaro running, so I finally got the thing cranking around. So hopefully next week I'll plop this on and we'll fire that up and see if that motor's any good. I hope this helps somebody. Guys, have a great day. Again, if you're using the Sonic cleaner, make sure you rod it. All right? Have a great day.